Hey Ralph, what was your first computer?
Hi Adam. My first computer was an Atari 600 XL computer.
600 or 800?
600. A small one.
Yes, but I only knew there's an 800. I saw this, so I have to research it afterwards. I didn't even knew that there is 600.
Doc, I think so. It was the small version.
Okay.
With less memory as the
800
version. Yes.
Okay, interesting. So what you did with the 600?
I learned programming. I remember.
Oh, no, really? You started with programming or you gaming first?
Programming.
From the beginning?
Yes, from the beginning. This computer was a gift from a present from my grandma for Christmas, and I remember that there was no booklet and nothing with this computer, and so I went into a bookstore and I bought a book, a thick book, which was named My Atari XL Computer, Learning Basic. And when I come home to my grandma, she was very angry with me because she said, "Why did you spend all your money in one computer book? What a nonsense." But this was my best it was the best idea I ever had.
Investment maybe even, right?
Investment, yeah.
Cool. So you are one of the few guests who really started just with programming, with coding.
Yes. I learned really programming, so I started
How old were you? How old were you?
I think I was 10 years or 12 years old.
Impressive.
And really, I learned all these commands, print and go to and for next and every command. And later, then we recognized, my friend and I, that you can buy magazines, computer magazines where source code was printed out for games. And then we started to type all these source code in our computers, and then we have our first games.
It's a cool story, actually. So before you got your first game, what you started to code? What was the idea? So why you were motivated to code?
I saw this by an elder friend, and he showed me this Atari computer, and I was so impressed that I can print "Hello World" on the television screen.
Oh yeah, okay.
And it was so fascinating for me. That was the initial.
Now hard question, because you said "Hello World." I think back then there was no Hello World, right? Was it really Hello World or was it something else? You don't.
No, we print. My first program was 10 print hello, 20 go to 10.
Exactly.
That
was what I did.
Fantastic.
Because what I remember is, I told it already on the podcast, but someone wrote on a table, on a blackboard, "Hello World," and I say, "Why are you writing, Hello World? Why world?" It's like, it is the first thing you do in a programming language. So really, but I was older, right? So it means the entire time I didn't knew about Hello World. It was later what it actually means. Why are you writing Hello World? What is it, right? So yeah, cool. So okay, your first program was Hello World, and then something else?
Yes, in this Atari computer, there was the way to implement graphic, so you can print colored lines and something like that, and then that was the beginning. At the end, we developed a game like Moonlander or something.
Oh, really? And it worked?
Yes, it worked. It was great, and we published this in a magazine.
It's a crazy story. So you wrote a game and published in a magazine, and it was I don't know, successful or you...
No, it was in these early days. It was not so important, I think.
Okay.
But yeah, it was fun, really fun.
Okay. And what happened then? I mean, what happened after Atari, or what you did? The most impressive thing on Atari, and what was the transition to the next level?
Yes, we developed more and more programs, and I bought a PC and learned assembler, and then I learned the Turbo Pascal and Delphi stuff.
But why you learned? You wanted to implement something specific?
Yes, I wanted to implement software for a company. This was my first idea to implement a kind of logistic software for a company I know. But this was more fun than work. It was really very, very early time, and But
and you had the company, or why? I mean, logistic is. I mean,
I worked in a company, and I know they have problems with their logistic. And then we had the idea to implement something like that. And so I come into this way to implement business applications more and more and more. Though.
Okay. So you study computer science or no?
No. I was everything self-taught, and yes, I learned it by myself.
So, but what is your education? So you started,
I have a normal education and learned in a shop, in a television shop, and so this was my way.
So you're electro engineering, something like that?
Yeah, electro engineer, something like that, exactly. And then I got my own company and started in the software industry.
What was the name of the company?
My first name of my company, that's a good question. I had changed it several times.
Yeah, sure, but the first one.
The first one, Cerisma, I think.
Hey, cool name.
Cerisma software. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. And what you wanted to achieve with the company, or what you wanted to sell, or what was the idea?
Yes, we want to sell business software, and this was because it brings us so much fun to develop software, and though it was clear we want to earn money with that, and this was our passion. Yes.
Okay. And what do you mean by business software? I mean, is it like communication, like Lotus Notes? Everyone integrated to Lotus Notes back then, I remember, right? So what was it? I mean,
yes, it was a first version of an ERP program, something like sales software for a company in Munich. And because you talked now about Lotus Domino and Notes, when I come to a point where I need to earn really more money because it was not so easy in the beginning, and then I started a job in an IT company in Munich, and then there I learned Lotus Notes and Lotus Domino. And then I started a new company, and real name was SRPA.
SRPA, okay.
And we did a lot of software development in an automotive company here in Munich, and on this platform, on these Lotus Domino, Lotus Notes. And I think that Lotus Notes was really an impressive concept, because you were able to build stable and strong applications in an extreme short time. It was fascinating. And we implemented a lot of modules and solutions for this platform. But this was my first situation when I come into a situation with this vendor login with IBM. So I had collected a lot of experience with Lotus Domino, but it was not easy to adapt this knowledge to other companies. And this was the point when I stopped this development direction and changed to open source with Java. And this is my passion now.
What you used before Java, prior to Java? Was Delphi, or what you used?
Delphi, yes. Delphi was my first language. And then I immediately started with Java.
Bolland, right? Bolland,
Delphi, yes.
The Delphi people, they are fanatic about Delphi. So I remember I was at a Java conference called Econ, and it was like joint conference between Delphi and Java developers. And there were some Delphi gurus, and I had a chat with them. They were really nice. From Switzerland came there, and they showed me, the Bolland launch events. They were completely fanatic, about Delphi, which I really appreciated. That they really like the programming language that much.
Yes, my friend, with him I learned programming, and we started with Delphi. He's still developing in Delphi.
Yeah, I think he's good, doing well. Cool. So, and then you transitioned to Java.
Yes, the transition to Java.
Why you found Java? Which version was it, and why? I mean, Delphi is great.
It was the first version of Java, and yes, I want to. It was fascinating, a new language. Yes, of course, I want to learn it. And then the situation was again, Java was. It was clear that Java is a serious programming language used by many companies, so it made sense to learn Java. Of course, yes. Cool. And also when I started in Lotus Domino, there was also the possibility to implement backend logic in Java. They had a nice system to implement Java agents backend logic. And though I started with Java, yes.
I also had to integrate with Domino. And they even had a JDBC driver, but it was a little bit strange. But you could access, Domino via JDBC. This was also one of my first projects because Nodes was big in Germany. It was like 1995 to 7, I would say. And everyone was Nodes. So lots of companies, all the forgot the names, but everyone integrated with Nodes. But the JDBC was a little bit slow. And the problem with Nodes back then was scalability.
Yes. It was maybe the scalability.
Do you know actually that the Couchbase is based on Nodes? So the main developer from Nodes quit, and the Couchbase database and you remember Groove back then? Groove was like open source database peer-to-peer, which was based on Nodes. And I think from there the Couchbase open source database happened.
Yes, I think the core concept from Lotus Notes was really good with this document-centric approach, it was very, very flexible and nice. And today I am developing a workflow engine, and we adapted a lot of the idea of Lotus Notes in this workflow engine. So we still drive this document-centric approach and say, okay, this is a kind of generic container for any kind of data, and you can put it into a document and process that, though it's different to typical database development.
Yeah, it was a document-oriented NoSQL database, right?
Yeah.
Cool. So I started with Java, first version of Java. What was your impression? I mean, I can imagine after Delphi going to Java, which was the feature, the Java 1.0, not even interfaces were there. So like
yes, it was a not so much fun. And in Delphi you had these visual development very early, object oriented. It was very strong, and then I think they brought out this JBuilder.
Exactly.
And this was a try to adapt this Delphi technology, but it was not equal. It was always slower and not so flexible.
Yeah, but still impressive. I really liked JBuilder. So I think I was at the professional version, and I think even I started with 1 or 2. But the problem with JBuilder, the refactoring was not good, right? You couldn't easily rename classes. This was the problem. And then Eclipse happened, and I immediately switched to Eclipse. And I think I'm responsible for killing most of JBuilders in the German companies with Eclipse, because I said, okay, if you cannot refactor, forget about this. Yeah. And then I didn't like Eclipse because of the plugin, so I switched back to NetBeans back then, but this was the story.
Oh, I was impressed by the plugin concept from Eclipse. I remember that I was on a Java conference.
But wait a second. What interests me, your first projects with Java. So what you did, what you tried to implement with the Java. So you migrated your Delphi stuff to Java, or what was the idea?
Yes.
Okay.
I wanted to implement my small business application in Java. So
with servlets, right, or with Swing? Web?
No web application. It was a normal program with UI and so.
But there was AWT. This was AWT, the early AWT, and then Swing. Okay, cool. So this is what everyone did. Applets, AWT with connection to a database, exactly. JDBC. Exactly. This was the first.
So it was a little bit hard because all these application was not comparable to that what you produced with Delphi. This was a problem on Windows platform. But on the other side, you can say, oh, my application runs everywhere. Probably.
And then what happened? You stick with Java from then?
Yes, I stick with Java, and I go in this Eclipse direction, implemented a plugin, and with the background of Lotus Notes, I come to this area of workflow engines and develop my own workflow engine, and then I needed a workflow modeler, of course. So Eclipse was brilliant solution. To implement plugins with modeling stuff. And so this was my idea, the Eclipse platform for the modeling side, and then, of course, server-based application for the business logic.
So which companies we talk about? There are 3 companies, you said, right? So this was the one was the, what was the nice name?
The Charisma, then the SRPR, and then finally I founded Imix. And Imix is Imix workflow
It is
imixs.com. .org and .com.org, yes, and we have a lot of projects on GitHub. If you use the .org, you see the Imix workflow project
on GitHub. We'll put everything to show notes. So give me, I will just publish it. Yeah. And so you started with Imix from scratch to implement workflow engine, right?
Yes, exactly. The goal was to adapt all what we have learned from Lotus Notes and Lotus Domino into a new open source solution. We call it Imix Workflow. And it was, as I told you, the same approach. We say, okay, we have a document-centric approach. We have a modeling concept in the background, so we are able to adapt new business logic very fast and very easy.
And what was the trigger? Like you wanted to do and hope, the clients will come to you, or you had a client?
Yes.
And, okay.
I hope that I can find more clients in this way. And at the end, this was true. It is now a good product. And and it was still fascinating writing and programming code, and workflow is also my passion.
Yeah. And what I remember is it was Java EE 6 based, right?
I started with Java Enterprise also from the early beginning. And go through all these stages. I started in the area where it was named Java 2EE. You remember the very first time, and then I upgraded with every new Java Enterprise version. And the funny thing was,
which server are you used back then?
I started with Glassfish.
Glassfish, okay.
Yeah,
this is.
And the funny thing was, with each new version of Java Enterprise, my core project becomes more easy and more simple, and with each iteration I was able to remove more and more code because Java Enterprise really developed in a nice direction to make it really simple to develop.
Business this logic. Is what my client really appreciate, because I know clients for 10-15 years. What we did 15 years ago is still up to date. You can remove more and more code until only a few annotations remain, but they never had to migrate.
Yes,
so
that is true.
I have to say the Java Enterprise is actually a huge business success story.
Yes, it is true. That is also my opinion about that.
And right now, if the economy is doing not that great, the people are remembering that maybe we show focus more on standards and open source. Yeah. And also, funny thing, what I do is the Airhacks TV. This is like, a show which runs already, this is crazy, for 8 years. I think now we have the 107th episode. And the 107th episode means one episode a month. So this is almost 8 years, right? And now the cool thing is, because what I got the genius idea that I walk 100 episodes back and see what were the questions back then. And the cool story is now there were questions like, should we still use Java EE because it will die? Maybe you should use the other framework. And the interesting part is we looked at the Play framework, and the cool story is the contributions to the Play framework are no more that great. This was the last episode. But what I didn't want to Quarkus and the popular things, but I took a look at Whitefly and all these servers, which are less popular, I would say, than Quarkus or Helidon. And everything I found, there were more contribution, than the old framework. So it means the interesting part is Java EE is not only around, it's still doing great. So this is actually, great, better than all the frameworks we mentioned, 8 years ago. Yeah,
that is true. I think there was not the best marketing around this Java Enterprise. And of course, there was much problems in the beginning.
Yeah.
But now with this shift to the Eclipse Foundation, I think the things becomes much better because they are more focusing on marketing and
it's really popular. So there was the Jakarta EE1 conference, and it was really well attended. So for an online event, there were several hundred people. So it was incredible. So I thought, because online events are not that popular usually. But they were live. I mean, not recorded views, but live, where several hundred people. I remember the exact, can't remember the exact number, but it was significant. It's like almost 1,000 or something. So it was not like 100 or significantly more. So it was in December. It's always in December. So to listeners, if you are interested, there's a free event called Jakarta E1, and it's December the 6th or something like this. So I was impressed. It's always nice community. So you have to speak as well there. So you have to apply and for sure. So okay, so your company. So, what is the unique story of your product? So, maybe what are the, why it is interesting, or what is the use case or whatever? So, tell us, elevator pitch. You are now,
The elevator pitch. Not much time for elevator pitch. The Imix workflow engine is a human-centric workflow engine. This is a unique point. You find a lot of workflow engines in the market, also open source workflow engines. But the problem with this term workflow engine is it is not really clear defined. So you find workflow engines to support your Kubernetes cluster, or you can find a workflow engine for your build pipeline, or whatever. And what we are doing is we do focusing on human-centric workflow, which is also a special kind of workflow engine. It is this classic understanding from workflow in a business. We coordinate a complex business process within an organization where different participants have to achieve a specific business goal. And the workflow engine guarantees that all steps are performed in the correct order and is documenting all these steps. It sounds a little bit boring, but it is very important for many companies.
Give me a use case where I can imagine. What do you mean human-centric? It means give me a use case, a typical use case. A typical
use case is a loan approval or an invoice request where different managers have to approve or reject the request. And it is important that based on the compliance rules from the company, that, for example, an invoice about more than 1,000 euros must be approved by 2 managers, and when it is less, it is enough with 1 manager, for example. So you have these business rules inside, and the human-centric workflow engine is coordinating this. And the workflow engine, the goal of this workflow engine is the workflow engine knows the organization structure and the persons there, and can route the information to the correct person. So this is the main approach to make sure that each request is going to the right person at the right time and is not forgotten. So it is a different approach from these technical workflow engines where you try to solve some kind of business logic or automation. What we do is we really try to give employees in a company the correct task list. So they can process on that.
This would be also cool for a run book, right? If let's say I have an incident and I have to solve it, so you could have a list. Okay, in this breaks, I could do this and this and this and this and this, and you can check it out. So
yes, of course, also this, but also this aspect of a revision-safe process. If you have to ensure that you can revision your process later on, that you can explain why did we approve this loan request.
Almost like blockchain, sounds like.
Right? Yeah, something like that. But it's more simple. And yes, this is the goal of this product, to give you a management-readable protocol of any kind of business process in an organization.
It's actually cool.
I give you another example about this, because mostly developers focus on this data-centric approach when they start developing something. So when you imagine you want to implement an invoice management system, then typically you start in Java with a data object, you name it invoice, and you have some attributes like invoice number and invoice date and something like that. And then you implement the CRUD operations, maybe with JPA, and then you are ready. You have your invoices in your database. And when we, from the workflow perspective, try to solve the same problem, an invoice management system, we ask different questions. We ask who has created the invoice and who has approved the invoice, and when did we send the invoice to our customer, and how often did we receive a payment. So we are looking on the timeline of this business object and not so much on the data within it. So in the most simple case, you just have a document, a PDF document, and you can adapt the workflow on that. And just coordinate, okay, what do we with this document in our organization, and who is responsible for this document?
Almost like an audit trail, right? So
yeah, exactly. So this is the benefit of a workflow engine. It's not... many developers think, a workflow engine is easy. I just have to add one more attribute to my data object, and I name this attribute status, and then I'm ready, because I can say this is completed.
But the main challenge in different workflow engines was always, you can have multiple processes in different versions running at the same time. This is the, you have an old process and new process. If you change something, you cannot just change the process in the middle. So you have to. It's almost like a little bit version control as well, right? In the
yes, this is right.
This is really hard to implement. For in a project, right? In a project, we can implement a state machine, but we cannot call a state machine a workflow engine, I would say.
Exactly.
And workflow engine is also, a huge point in workflow engine is the, how to call it, the role change. So I'm in the role, manager, and now the task goes to worker. Maybe you have to, and the worker is only allowed to do, specific things, and then comes back to the manager with different roles, right?
Mm-hmm, exactly. And this is the main problem or the challenge for human-centric workflow, because you interact with people, and you need to make sure that the correct actors can access the data, and also you need to protect the data from unallowed changes. And though the workflow engine puts an ACL on each process instance, so in a workflow system you can say if you have thousands of process instances, each of these can have individual read and write access. And again, this is very similar to Lotus Notes, because they also had this concept of setting an ACL on a document. And this is what we do. So this is good stuff for confidential data processing.
No, it's interesting. And from technical perspective, is still Jakarta your system?
Yes. I am now on the way to migrate to Jakarta 10.
Cool.
And
Glassfish still or Payara?
Whitefly.
Oh, Whitefly. Okay, cool.
It is independent.
No, independent. No, but of course, I don't know. Of course, but
I am working mostly with Whitefly. I don't know.
And
I know it the best.
And the which database?
It's database independent because of JPA, but I use mainly Postgres database.
Yeah, this is what I thought. And do you have what is about the performance? Is how to scale it? What's the story?
It is in the first beginning I made. It was not so good scaling because of the problem when you have a generic data object with a lot of attributes and in a generic way, then how can you index that in a database? It's not easy. And I ran into this SQL join hell, and it was very, very slow. And then I dropped all these indices and store all my data simply in a blob data field. And the cool stuff is then
JSON-B or blob?
I use a blob field. And then I use a Lucene index, and I make a full text index on this. And it is immense fast. It is incredible fast. Yeah. Even if you have millions of data sets, you can find very fast the requested data. And it is fine for a workflow engine. Yeah, it's actually cool what you did because this is like Elasticsearch without Elasticsearch, right? Because this is and of course, for operation is great because you don't have a moving part. This is the Lucene is a library. You can just use it, and you don't have a running thing, right? Yeah, exactly. And I can change the data in my process instance during runtime. I can add new attributes. I can remove attributes. I'm not affected to change my data model in the background. This is nice stuff. And in workflow management, you often have this, that you have long-running processes which run weeks or a month or years, for example, and then the data model will also change in the company because they have new data which need to be entered. And so you have always this situation, you need more different data, and this works well with Lucene because it can adapt new attributes very easy. Do you have still fun developing the software? Yes. Are you coding or are you a manager now? I'm coding every day. This is cool. How long you're building already the software? Pardon? When you started the company, Imix? When was the start? It was started in year 2000. So this is 23 years. Yes. Fun. This is a similar success story. And on our podcast, we had an author of APR on Twitter of JPOS. This is Java Point of Sale. Similar story. He wrote, the entire carrier, so a Java system, which is in all, the terminals in Brazil and worldwide, actually. So there's a market league, jpos.org, and has lots of fun, everything open source. And he says, okay, if something doesn't work, he rebuilds from scratch and does it better. So interesting. So now,
This is really great because it's also my idea. Just keep coding because it's lots of fun and stay away a little bit from management. This is until now it works, right? So this was the question to you. So now you said it's completely open source. Now,
yes.
Why I should spend money on Immix? So what I get support, or what's the idea?
Yes, you get support. We are the workflow experts. We have a lot of experience about how to integrate a business process into a company, and this is what we sell to our customers: this consulting and this.
Well, could I buy support for your software as well?
Yes, of course, you can buy software support for the software as well. But mostly our customers are small and medium-sized companies, and they use the Immix workflow engine to digitize their business processes. And though these companies or the managers from the companies don't want to know much about technology, they just want to solve their problem. Yeah, and we do the technology.
What I try to do is I always try to buy support from open source companies, not necessary to support them, but peace of mind, right? So if I buy support from you, and there's let's say log4j problem or whatever, then I hope you will notify me and provide me a solution to this, right? But if I just pick the open source software just without any support, then I need time to deal with the software. So for me, is my now using open source, it doesn't mean it is cheap, because you need time to maintain it. So and this is why open source contributions, in my mind, are important, because let's say you have highly skilled developers. You will just, run Immix in-house, and they find a bug. And they are skilled enough to say, no problem, 5 minutes, we will fix our workflow engine and won't contribute back to you. What happens now, they have created their own fork. And now they have a huge problem, because you are fixing bugs, you are improving the product, and they are stuck. So this is what I saw. This is actually, it is really, you can save money by buying support from open source software if you don't care about the technology. And if you care about the technology, if you find a fix, or you always have to contribute back, otherwise you are stuck on a fork. And this is actually what many don't understand. They say, okay, open source is free, they download, and it's like, okay, but what you're doing is playing. What happens in 5 years? You will stuck on Java 20. We have Java 40. And you are completely stuck. And with Log4j happens, accident or whatever, which can happen at any time, or maybe even JVM. What even more likely, they will find a JVM problem in all the JVM, and you try to swap JVM, let's say, and you cannot, because the product supports the newest JVM. So I would say, this is my point of view, that I say, okay, if we really you have at least to talk, to the founders of open source and see how it works, right?
Yes, this is right. This is an important aspect which is not well understood from many companies. I agree with you. And the other aspect is, if you use in a company open source project, you are more free, and you are not, you have no dependence to the initial company. So you can switch the software team later and say, okay, we continue working on this Immix project by ourselves. This is possible. But yes, you should not fork a project and then go away and say, I can make this all better.
Exactly.
It's not
this is
true.
But what's important is, if I download the open source software, so I can try for free, but then I would like to have supported Immix workflow engine. Then I can just, go to you and buy support, because in some companies it's not possible, right? So if you have Whitefly, it is hard to switch to JBoss, for instance, right? Because you will have, there's different versions, but in your case, you can just, there is no much difference between the commercial Immix and open source, right?
That's true. We also have the same version. It is always our open source version, and what we are doing is really helping people to integrate the workflow engine into their IT projects. This is our service.
Yeah, really cool. So I really like your product. I understand it better. So now, and we'll put it to the show notes to the other listeners. Now, you listened to one of my sessions, and you are not happy what I said. You say, okay, this is not the Adam from before. So
exactly.
I cannot remember what I said, but I think it was what you didn't like. But I would like to clarify this. This is why we're talking. And what I said, what was. I'm just curious, because I really forgot what I said. So I was like, on Twitter, it was flame war. If we talk to another, this is way better, right? So
It was about Kubernetes, I think.
Okay.
You explained how cool it is to implement software with Kubernetes, and I think it was a Quarkus project and some Kubernetes stuff. And the point was that it was very nearly bundled into the AWS stack. And so I recognize that it is not so open. Normally you talk about use open standards, use Jakarta or Java Enterprise and stay on open standards. And then you made this shift to the AWS framework. And it was a little bit proprietary what you showed. And this was what I was not so happy with.
You are absolutely right, and we can discuss. If not, we have to schedule another episode because really interesting topic. For instance, I have 2 points of view. So if I run on premise, here's the old Adam, everything is open. What I don't get, if clients would like to go to AWS and Azure, and they start to decouple from Azure on AWS because they want to be independent from AWS. And I say, okay, what are you doing? I mean, then stay at home, because this is pointless. Why you need cloud at all? So if you go to the cloud, what I will do in your case, for instance, I will buy support from you. I will drop the database. I will pick the proprietary database from Amazon called Aurora, still Postgres. Why? Because I would like that Amazon maintains the database for me. I don't like to fiddle with Postgres. So I got the Aurora from database. Then I will pick Fargate and put your Docker image on Fargate. So it means I wouldn't use Kubernetes, way too complicated. I would put your software, create container image, and then say, okay, on AWS, I pick Fargate because it's way simpler than Kubernetes. On Azure, I will pick, let's say, Azure Container Instances is one instance, or Azure App Service is a cluster, but not Kubernetes. So it means I really like the proprietary cloud products because they are easier than Kubernetes. And but I always try to find out what happens if AWS is no more, or it is too expensive, or they go crazy. How problematic is it to pick this and put it to Azure or Oracle Cloud or Google Cloud? And the cool story is, if we pick, let's say, container, I don't care which service, orchestrates my container. It doesn't have to be Kubernetes. Yes. I always pick the simplest possible service from them. But if there is added value in your solution, I will absolutely pick, your product. Problem becomes, if this is what Elasticsearch did, right? So it's okay. AWS is no more allowed, to run our software. And what AWS did, they forked the Elastic and they call it OpenSearch and they maintain it completely, right? So it means what can happen that AWS say, hey, Imix is cool, we will maintain it, and now you have a problem because Amazon took your software and it runs, Imix as a service. But this is, the problem with your decision. You say if this is truly open source, then you have to live with it. You have a problem. Then you are competing with Amazon with your services, and it sounds okay in your case because you say, we have enough clients, we have fun, and we are the expertise. And of course, Amazon will never ever be able to compete with you because all the decision you have in your head, so you are the expert of the thing. Maybe it was not clear, but it's what I said. And what I see what the companies are doing, they have Kubernetes on premise. Now they see, a great talk, clouds are cheap, and it's okay, lift and shift, they put the entire Kubernetes to the cloud, and now they are completely depending on AWS and Kubernetes because they have to maintain, the Kubernetes permissions and the Amazon permissions, and this is the beginning of the end. So this is what I actually hopefully said. And Quarkus, yes, I like Quarkus. It is not completely Jakarta-y, but it's good enough. And in your particular case, what I will try to do, because it's really, if you're using completely Java-E, you could actually run your stuff as a function. What you can do, this is what I do a lot. I pick my old Java-E applications, don't use containers, I use zip, function.zip. And then from outside, what happens is Quarkus has an extension which transforms the HTTP event from AWS to JAX-RS. So you can actually run your old software as a function. Why is good? Because the cool story is, if your software is not used to 2 transactions per second, you will pay maybe nothing. And it's also good, for energy efficiency or whatever. So this is my point of view, and people don't always, this happened to me several times. They say, what are you talking about? So, okay, if you go to the cloud, this is my opinion, go to the cloud really. Use the features of the cloud. Or stay at home. For me, cloud is just architecture decision. It is not better than on-premise. I actually still have my own server. I run my stuff on my server, but sometimes we have to go to the cloud, global scale, or you have to higher security with the audits and whatever. It's really really hard to do it in your own data center.
Yes, I agree with you. And don't get me wrong, I don't want to say that AWS or Azure are not strong and powerful platforms. They did, of course, a good job. Mm-hmm. The problem I see currently in the development of cloud computing is, on the one side, we have this Kubernetes, which is a great open source framework. And there's a broad community, and it is really cool stuff to solve this problem of how to run my containers in an environment. And one aspect of Kubernetes is that it is similar to Jakarta specification. It only defines how a container environment should run. It does not provide you a lot of things like a network plugin or storage solution. This is all not part of Kubernetes, and this is what makes the most trouble for when you start with Kubernetes, because you're missing these things like network and database. But it is the power of Kubernetes because it is open. It gives you the freedom to replace every component with a product you like. So you are totally free to set up this environment for your own needs. And now when you look at the hyperscalers from Microsoft and Amazon, they did a complete different business. They want to achieve this vendor lock-in. They want, like you told me, they want go to our platform and stay there, and you have no more trouble in the future, but you should not switch to other platforms.
Yeah.
And I think that many users today did not understand this aspect.
The history is I hope I do right a bit different, because what happened is that, the Fargate is really old. So the Fargate on AWS, I had the first YouTube videos where I pushed Glassfish to Fargate is 7 years old, I think. And what happened is Google saw that the AWS on Azure or AWS is gaining momentum, and they open source Kubernetes to say, okay, this is our solution, because they had Borg inside, and because of Google they were really successful. And now AWS and Azure, they see that the clients would like to have Kubernetes because it's popular, and Kubernetes happened afterwards. So on AWS, on Azure, Kubernetes available for 2 years. But they had their solutions, orchestration, years before. I don't know whether you heard about Beanstalk, Elastic Beanstalk. This was like, the idea that was built in Glassfish from the beginning on AWS. But it was heavy. Then Fargate came out. It was a little bit faster. So I don't see vendor lock-in. I think the teams which care about the products on AWS or on Azure, they care about simplicity. Of course, management would like to have vendor lock-in, for sure. I mean, this is why commercial companies are there, right? They would like to have as many clients as possible there. But what I would do, I would use Kubernetes, but mostly on Google, GCP. Because, Google is the, home of Kubernetes, and it's the best possible experience on Google. If you do Kubernetes on AWS, on Azure, it is not convenient. You have to care about upgrades by yourself. And the main problem is because Kubernetes is own cloud, an own cloud inside a cloud doesn't make any sense. So for me, I have two clouds to care about. Even if you do infrastructure as code on AWS, there is one toolset called CDK to provision your VPCs, the IP addresses and whatever. And then it's done. And there is another toolkit to provision Kubernetes. I mean, this is for me, I don't like to care about this. So the best would be, to buy from you a service. And if you say, we run Kubernetes on AWS, I don't care. I just like your workflow engine. But if I get your workflow engine, I don't care about a Kubernetes. I will create a simple container and run it in one day. And if AWS says, okay, it's too expensive, I spend another day and run the same stuff on Azure. This would be my approach without any standards. I just pick whatever they offer. It has to be simple. So I would say simplicity is for me the most important thing.
Yes, but also it is... For me, it's always the aspect of independence. I don't want to get into the situation where I depend on one company. And I see it as a problem. When I choose AWS for my new cloud provider, then I locked in this environment.
Yeah, but we have to differentiate, right? If you would build a product, you will like say, Imix Cloud. I think Kubernetes is the right decision because you can run Kubernetes on premise, Kubernetes everywhere. If I'm in a project, if I tell my clients, we spent 1 week more, but then you are portable, they say, okay, you are crazy. So just, do whatever necessary to have Imix in the cloud, right? This is complete. This is a difference, I would say, you have to consider and explain clients. We can say, okay, we use Fargate or App Runner on AWS. or ACI and app service on Azure, but we are depending on Azure. Question from client, what happens if Azure disappears? So, okay, then we need one day to migrate the container to AWS.
This is correct. You can migrate the container, but what is with your data? This is maybe the main problem.
Oh, yeah, of course. You are right. So if this is a relational database, in my case, always Postgres.
Yeah.
But this is not the Postgres open source. It's called Aurora. It's like half open source, half, backed.
Yeah.
But you are right, Postgres. But if we start to talk about NoSQL databases, it's also interesting. If you go, let's say, to Azure, there is Cosmos DB. On AWS, it's called DynamoDB. They are proprietary databases. I have to say, I prefer them. And the reason being is there is no infrastructure provisioning. You don't have to care about VPC, IP addresses, subnets, firewalls. You just say, give me a table and I have the table. But it's a trade-off. You are depending on the infrastructure, but you have to know about it, right? So it's just,
exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Everyone needs to be aware of this problem. And,
exactly.
And my observation was when you search with Google about Kubernetes, you found so many articles and blog posts and tutorials and, of course,
because developers like to play, right?
Yeah, there are a lot of stuff and you can learn it very fast. But when you look deeper into the tutorials and blog posts, you will recognize, and my impression is that the half of the articles is either talking about AWS or Microsoft Azure.
Okay.
And they are not really talking about Kubernetes.
Yeah.
And this is a little bit sad, and it reminds me to a situation in the early beginning of Java Enterprise, where we have the situation with IBM WebSphere and Oracle BI WebLogic. They fight against and want to be the only application server in the world. And this was not a good situation for the Java Enterprise idea, because they
this is why Whiteflight happened. JBoss,
yeah,
right?
Exactly.
JBoss was, the gorilla. And I would say the solution would be that the companies understand they don't always have to go to the cloud. It is absolutely fine to have Kubernetes on premise.
Exactly.
But if you go to the cloud, you shouldn't replicate what you have at home in the cloud. You should pick the features of the cloud. Otherwise, the cloud is pointless. This is the idea.
Yes. And this is also important to tell the people that setting up a Kubernetes cluster on premise is not so big stuff. You always read that this is complex. No, it is not so complex. It is a little bit strange, but it is manageable.
I mean, but if you do it on premise, it is way cheaper than in the cloud.
Yes.
If you have, for instance, on premise, you can have for every developer and dev instance of Kubernetes. In the cloud, you will pay 100 euros for the control plane per month without having any worker nodes. Yeah. So I would say, Kubernetes at home, just do it. There is actually, this is the only reasonable solution. If you go to the cloud, you don't have to use Kubernetes, and there are simpler solutions. This was actually the idea of the talk. So I'm really glad we talked, Ralph. It was a nice discussion, and give me all your stuff you have to promote. I will put it to the show notes, and your workflow engine sounds really fun. Okay, I will send you some links to my project. Where people can find you, so promote, is your Twitter account or whatever you have, GitHub, whatever. Yes, yeah, okay. So where you can say it? Where people can find you? They can find me on GitHub, and I have my own blog, and of course the main project page is imix.org. Yeah, your name is Ralph Soika. So the Twitter is rsoika. This is the rsoika. And the company is IMIXS. Exactly. Cool. Was nice to have you. We clarified everything. Everything fine. Thank you a lot. Okay.